And Nina, just whenever you're ready, you can start.
Oh.
It is your intro.
That's pretty stressful. We're recording now. Okay.
We're recording now, but don't freak out. Just like whenever you're ready.
Don't panic.
You guys.
Just absolutely do not panic.
There's no pressure. Just
You gotta not panic. Calm down.
Real chill.
You need to calm down.
Can I start now?
Just like
only if you're not gonna panic.
Just relax.
If you're ready, but we're not pressuring you. But if like you're ready, like you can for sure start.
If you're ready in your heart, you know.
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Don't panic.
Okay.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Obsession Podcast, where we talk about horror movies. I'm Nina, and today we're talking about Overlord.
Hi Nina, who's talking about Overlord. I'm Noah,
who's also talking about Overlord. And I'm Emma, who's talking about Overlord.
And I'm Jeff, who's talking about Overlord.
I do want to mention we are talking about Overlord the movie, not Overlord the anime. So all you weebs, get the fuck out.
Yeah,
I did actually.
Weebs are not allowed.
I learned Overlord the anime existed last night when we went to go watch Overlord, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. Oh, there it is.
I learned that the anime existed just now when it got mentioned by somebody in this podcast.
Who?
I've watched the anime.
Is it good?
Is it good?
Season 1 is okay, and season 2, the quality dive bombs a bit.
Oh.
Ooh.
Sad when that happens.
One of my favorite things people do with examples is when you take like a big definitive phrase like dive bomb and then you say just a bit.
It's like, the was very sharp but short.
Yeah.
Turned into a big pile of shit, kind of.
Turned into a big pile of poopy. Okay, Nina, whenever you're ready to do a summary.
Don't panic.
Don't panic.
No pressure from any of us.
You guys gotta stop. Okay, so Overlord. Overlord is a 2018 movie. The only star that I'm aware of is Kurt Russell's child, Wyatt Russell, who looks exactly like Kurt Russell.
You may have recognized him, Jeff, as the person that looked exactly like Kurt Russell. To the point where when I saw it, I'm like, wow, Kurt Russell looks strangely young.
Wow.
Corporal Ford.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he looked familiar, but I couldn't place why.
Well, because there's 3 white guy actors who all look the same, who are in like different TV shows. There's Charlie Hunnam is another one. He's in Sons of Anarchy.
He can do a little bit.
And then there's one more whose name I can't remember, who also looks just like Wyatt Russell. So I always get them mixed up. I totally thought on first viewing that it was Charlie Hunnam, or Hunnam or whatever, but it's not. It's Wyatt Russell. Other than that, there's a guy who was in Umbrella Academy, but I really don't know any of the other actors.
There was the one guy that was in the Star Trek movies that died really tragically.
Anton Yelchin.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was he in this one?
Yeah,
No.
He was the camera guy.
He can't. No.
No, he was already
wasn't.
dead by then.
I'm pretty sure it was him. I'm going to look this up while you guys keep talking.
He doesn't even look like him.
He looks like him.
He died in 2016.
Yeah, I was about to say, this movie came out way after Green Room, and Green Room was his last role.
Just about to say that this movie came out in 2018.
Okay.
So this
Emma, cut all of that to make me look less stupid. Thanks.
Anyway, so Overlord came out in 2018. The only stars that I'm aware of are Umbrella Academy guy and Wyatt Russell.
Who? You
can't
just
Tibbet.
say Umbrella Academy.
He was Tibbet. He was, I think, Harold in the Umbrella Academy, the one-eyed dude. Yeah. So other than that, I'm not really aware of any other actors. Yeah. So Overlord is a Nazi zombie movie, but I think saying that is a little bit misleading, because I think when a lot of people hear Nazi zombie movie, they think Dead Snow, which is a lot more, for lack of a better term, it's a comedy. So it's a lot more lighthearted. People think Nazi zombies, they think like schlocky, which this is, but it's also much more somber in tone than I think some people might expect, which is
it's really a war movie first and a zombie movie second, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
The focus is really not on the zombies.
I'd agree with that.
And like I feel like that's when I was reading the reviews, which we'll talk about later, that was something that I picked up a lot, was what people expected going in and what their main complaints were, and my unofficial FBI profile of the person who hates this movie. Anyway,
that was what Nina was doing for a great deal of time last night, was
because I've
while
already
we were
seen
watching the movie, looking through other people's reviews and getting mad at them for complaining about objectively unimportant things.
Yeah.
Oh, like
So we will get to that, but
Okay.
I do want to get through the introduction first. So the movie follows a squadron that are going to take down a tower that is preventing air support for D-Day. They go into a small village in France, and they're trying to take this tower out, and zombies are there. And that's, I think, the best spoiler-free like summary that I can give.
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds right.
There's not a lot of plot to the movie. If you hear the phrase Nazi zombie D-Day, you're halfway there.
Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of war movies. There's not typically a ton of plot because it's just some dudes going to a place to commit a task, and
Yeah.
that's
The first
the whole
act
thing.
is unnecessary because the setup is, it's the war. Everyone knows about World War II. You don't need to lay groundwork for that. We can just launch right into, all right, so we need to go blow up these guns.
Yeah.
I
What-
really liked the first act.
I liked it a lot. Yeah.
I liked it.
No,
I think
liked
it was maybe
I
my
just mean,
favorite
like,
part
in
of the
general,
movie.
that's, like, the thing with war movies.
So one thing I do want to say is, obviously, because there are zombies, this is an alternate history, but I do mention this because one time I made my friends watch Inglourious Bastards with me, and one of my friends did not know it was an alternate history. So going into any World War II themed movie, I now feel the need to say this is an alternate history. Okay, so let's do trigger warnings. Big
Wait,
one
but what
for.
about our reviews?
Oh, do we do that first?
Yeah, typically.
I believe we usually do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't believe that you were just going to steamroll
Yeah.
right past that.
The
Wow.
content
That's
warning is
vaguely
like
important.
the last thing before the spoiler synopsis.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. My
But don't
rating
feel
for
bad.
this movie.
Don't feel bad. There's no pressure from any of us.
Can we just change this podcast to casually gaslighting? Because realistically,
You guys sound like my boss.
No.
Calm down.
For,
Nina.
for those, he tells me to calm down constantly.
Oh,
But for
no.
those listening to the podcast, I fell and dislocated my shoulder this week, and the whole day today, my boss was heavily implying that I was faking it.
Oh.
Oh my
And-
god.
Jeez.
Yeah.
yeah, Nina at work in a sling, and he's just like, "You're faking that because you don't."
I
wanna
was like,
work."
can you hand me a bag? And he was like, oh, my shoulder itches, I can't.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
He's a jerk. Anyway, enough about my boss, who most of the time is okay. Let's talk about our ratings. Mine, personally, I really enjoy this movie. I don't think it's necessarily perfect, but for what it is, I think it is exactly what it needs to be. So this is a solid 8 out of 10 for me.
Nice. So right
So-
up there with Nightmare on Elm Street.
But below Halloween.
Was how? No, that can't.
Nina, is this movie better in your mind than Halloween?
Yes.
So on my front, what do you call? I think if we're looking at this objectively as a movie, right, it's probably a 6. But I think it's a very, very fun movie, so I give it a 9.
It's fair. Jeffy.
Oh, I was gonna let you go first. I usually go last on these. I actually disagree that if you look at it just as a movie, it would probably get a lower score. Because I think if you remove the central premise of the movie, which is the Nazi zombie Wolfenstein stuff, you're still left with a pretty freaking good war movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as you're willing to buy into all the particular narrative issues that a war movie requires you to buy into, this is still a very good movie.
Dying.
I think the pacing is actually fantastic because it goes for most of the movie at a rate that should be exhausting, but they dial it back just enough to keep you focused on it.
It's funny you should say that because I saw a lot of people complaining that it didn't move fast enough.
Really? I thought it was
I've
just
seen
about
complaints
perfect.
about the pacing.
I have never watched a movie that was paced the way that this movie is. I thought it was absolutely riveting for the entire almost 2 hours of it. So I'm going to give it like an 8.5 solid, and I think it earns that in every way.
Nice.
I want to change my rating to a 9 now that I've thought more.
Wow.
No, ratings are final.
already.
Ratings
It was
are final,
teetering
Nina.
on an 8 to 9, but I think it's a 9.
Calm down. The ratings
you
are
can
final.
say
You've
like
already set a number.
8.5.
Anyway,
about
it's
you,
me,
Emma?
Emma, with my rating, which is... I actually figured out where I recognize that actor from.
Which one?
Because I Googled it. The camera guy that I thought was Anton Yelkin.
Ah, who is he?
He is in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
he's
He's like
Fitz,
the nerdy science guy.
Fitz and
Yeah.
Simmons.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
I was hoping he'd be like an obscure X-Man or something.
No, he kind of looks like Anton Yelkin a little bit, and so I think that just triggered
It's the
that
baby
in my
face.
brain. Yeah, it's the baby face.
It is a baby.
Seeing him not dressed up in his war stuff, he does look a lot more like Anton Yelkin.
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
Okay, so with all that said, I really enjoyed this movie. It was a fun watch, and I agree the pacing was really, really great. I'm gonna give it a... I think the highest I've given a movie is a 9, which was The Invitation. I'm gonna give this like an 8.99.
Not as good as The Invitation, but still pretty dang good.
Yeah, I think The Invitation... I'm gonna get into this a bit later, but I think The Invitation as kind of like a more central horror movie, like, I just enjoyed a lot more.
Fair.
But this was just, like, super, super fun, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do think it's going to
Alright.
have a bit more rewatch value than The Invitation, though.
I would agree. It was super fun to watch a
I
second
was gonna say we can verify it is very fun to watch twice.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that.
Is it the trigger warnings or the scary rating first?
Up
Trigger
to Emma.
warnings.
Trigger warnings. Okay, trigger warnings. This movie has, I think, a few of them. I will start with body horror. I feel like that's kind of obvious. There's some pretty graphic body horror in this one.
Yeah.
War scenes is another obvious one. A lot of that going on.
Nazis.
Nazis.
Nazis do exist in this movie, yeah.
They do exist
they are
in this
very
movie.
Present.
I will talk about the fact that there are no swastikas, but there are still
are
other.
actually no swastikas. Oh shoot.
There
I
are
didn't notice.
Yeah, there are other symbols. There's the, typical like Iron Cross, that kind of symbolism, etc., etc. One last thing that I think is very important is attempted rape twice.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that if you're uncomfy with that, which I think most people are. But yeah, I think that's everything off the top of my head. Oh, there's like a really gross looking dog corpse at the beginning of the movie, but
I don't think it was a dog though.
I think you can put like big quotation marks around
Yeah.
dog on that one.
the jackal guarding the entrance to hell or whatever they said.
I thought it kind of looked like a possum skull, honestly, but
I think it
Too
looked
big.
like a dog.
are you the cop from Halloween? It might have been a skunk.
Anyways,
All right, with those trigger warnings out of the way, it is time for Emma's super secret scary rating. So go ahead and take it away, Emma.
man.
Thanks, Emma.
Is it
I'll
a
take it
secret
away.
this time?
It's super secret. So,
Whoa.
It's always
when
secret.
Nina told me, hey, I want to watch Overlord, the movie based on Nazi zombies in Call of Duty, I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's your turn, I guess. And so we watched it. Now, I have seen some zombie movies before, including Shaun of the Dead.
A good one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's about it. Okay. Compared to Shaun of the Dead, this movie's very scary. So scary, I would give it a 10 out of 10.
That's very valid.
I hope they put that on the back of the DVD cover. Compared to Shaun of the Dead, this movie is very scary.
All right, so how about that spoiler summary?
Yeah, I'm here with it. Okay, so this movie follows, like I said, a squad of American soldiers who are flying into enemy territory to destroy a radio tower that is preventing air support on D-Day. On the way in, the plane is shot down, and most of the people we were introduced to on the plane are killed. We are left with 5 people: Dawson, Boyce, Tibbet, Chase, and Ford. Shortly after they have reunited after the plane crashes, they are walking through a field of mines. Dawson's talking about his bright future, as you do in a war movie, and he blows up, which is one of my favorite deaths in the movie. They continue on. They run into a young woman from the local town. Her name is Chloe. She lets them hide in her attic while some of the Nazi soldiers come in. When she's guiding them up to the attic, she mentions that her aunt is in a room sick. She says, don't worry about it. She's just sick. Hide in the attic. The soldiers are coming, whatever. They meet her little brother at that point as well. His name's Paul. He's cute. The soldiers come in. They're creepy. The main soldier starts harassing Chloe, which prompts Boyce, our main character, who's a soft-hearted little boy, to go downstairs and beat this Nazi guy over the head and knock him out because he's sick of watching Chloe get harassed. They beat the guy for the Nazi guy for intelligence. He tells them how many people there are in this church where the tower is, and Boyce freaks out because he thinks they're beating this guy too hard, and I think at that point they split up, right? Is that what's happened? And Boyce goes out to find the other 2 people who have left.
Yep.
Yeah. Boyce tries to go find the 2 people who have left, and he ends up underneath the church. While he's underneath the church, he finds a lot of really scary stuff. The Nazis have been doing experiments with this tar that's underneath the town that they think is magical. They've been incubating it in these humans who are in like these weird sacks hanging from the ceiling that Boyce finds. He finds the serum itself that they've been incubating in these people and takes a syringe full before he sees a woman who's just a spine with a head. She's begging for mercy, and he freaks out so bad he runs out of the church. When he gets back, the Nazi guy's knocked out, tied up. He tries to tell... Oh, sorry, I forgot. He finds Rosenfeld.
He does find Rosenfeld.
Yeah, when he's under the church, Boyce finds one more member of the squad, Rosenfeld, who is Jewish, and was on the plane joking nervously about what would happen if he were caught by the Nazis. And of course, that happens, and he is experimented on briefly before Boyce saves him and brings him back. When they arrive back, Boyce is breathless. Rosenfeld's trying to get some healing, and Boyce tries to tell them about the experiments going on. Ford's like, his corporal, his commanding officer's like, that has nothing to do with us. We just need to blow up the tower. Unfortunately, while this conversation is going on, one of the other members of the squad gets shot to death by the Nazi, who just kind of grabs a gun and fires blindly and manages to hit him. He dies, and Boyce, in a fit of sadness, tries to use the serum to bring him back to life. It works briefly until the guy turns into a zombie and starts trying to like just throw everyone around the room, and Boyce is forced to put him back down again. After that, they, have to go to the tower and explode it. Basically, it just follows from there as your typical like operation to go into the tower and blow it up. During that, the fight between the Nazi captain and Ford is forced to stay behind and blow himself up. And yeah, I feel like that's a really weak summary, but that's basically the plot. I'm missing some details there, but
That's about it.
So, did anybody else spend the entire movie waiting for Rosenfelder to start turning into a zombie?
No.
Because
no.
he had that thing stuck in him, and I thought for sure something weird was going to be happening with him at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fair thing to assume, but my assumption was that they were prepping him to be like one of those incubators.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think he actually had anything hosing into him yet. He wasn't in the bag. He was not a sack man.
The sack men were creepy.
This is true.
I want to know your guys' thoughts first.
Boyd was a good Boyd.
He was...
His relationship with Chloe, adorable.
Yes.
Loved how that developed. And
very cute.
I forget his name, but like the jerk
Tibbet.
army
Tibbet.
dude, Tibbet, his relationship with the kid and how that evolved, adorable.
I really like the way that they wrote Tibbet. Like, he's very annoying right at the start, but he really grows on you by the end of the movie.
Yeah, 100%.
By the end, he was the one that I was most worried about. It was like, this guy has got to make it or I'm going to riot.
I think a lot of it is, like, with a lot of annoying characters, the writers will tend also to make the choice of, like, making that character completely useless.
Mm-hmm.
And Tibbet is a very, very useful member of the team.
He is.
And he's a fantastic shot with that rifle. Oh, jeez.
It's why he thinks he can be a jerk. Is because he's good at things, and Boyce is just a little baby boy.
I think we only see him miss like 2 shots in the whole movie. Every time he fires that gun, somebody dies.
Yeah, he's very capable. I really loved the scene where he and Rosenfeld are covering the door.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
But yeah.
I do have one like actual opinion
Go for
about
it.
this movie that I will dive into. So the reason why I said The Invitation as more of a horror movie kind of struck me more, and I enjoyed it more, is because I feel like action movies as a whole, when they take on another subgenre, dilute that genre.
Okay.
I can get with that.
So I think Jeff was saying earlier, like this felt very much more like kind of a war movie than like a horror movie. And it just felt more like an action movie to me than a horror movie. But there were like some of those more creepy elements. However, it didn't like super strike me as a horror movie.
Yeah.
If I could make
can
one
see that.
assertion there,
Yeah,
all war movies are horror movies, kind of.
true.
Because, I mean, what is more horrifying than war?
Ghosts.
Well, you got me there. All right. Back it up.
But no,
Freaking dunked on.
I agree with Jeff. War movies can be very horrific. I was talking to Noah about All Quiet on the Western Front, I think. There are a couple really striking scenes in that movie that like have stuck to me to this day because the deaths of certain characters were just so sudden. And it really stuck with me how like terrifying it is that we just throw bodies at a problem until it's gone.
Yeah.
Like
That's
those
the whole
are people.
the whole first 15 or 20 minutes of this movie is just that. It's just like I mean, like, just to me, it was a really big thing just when they all jump out of that plane right before it explodes.
Yeah.
And we've got that scene of Boyce just falling through this freaking dogfight. And it makes you really, like, it makes you realize the amount of awful things that can happen to you before you even hit the ground in that situation. You know, you could get shot, you could still get blown up, you could get hit by another plane. There's any number of things that could happen. And then all those things become even more likely once you deploy your parachute and you stop moving as fast. And then even when you survive all those things, you can still land in water and you might get tangled up in your parachute and just drown. Like,
Or do what Boyce did, where he didn't deploy his parachute nearly soon enough, and that water's the only thing that saved him.
Yeah.
Even though it still almost killed him. Speaking of, I would have drowned. I could not have held my breath that long.
Yeah.
I did check.
I do that during movies too.
I did not do that this time. I usually do, but I didn't.
Especially with the no notice going into the water.
Oh, right? Yeah, you don't see it coming. He just suddenly hits the water, and that's that.
And I think that while those parts were almost more horrific than the zombies, the one thing that maintained the realistic like feeling to me by the end of the movie was the attitude that Boyce held towards this can't get out. Like Ford and Boyce both agreed that like neither side should have access to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been like that, I don't think that kind of thing would have been as scary, because it felt very Captain America First Avenger by the end. It felt very Captain America versus the Red Skull in that last fight between Ford and the Nazi guy.
A little bit.
You know? So that was more of a like, we two immortals locked in eternal combat kind of thing, which
like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, that is what I was quoting. But yeah, no, by that point, like, you would think that a lot of like the realism would have evaporated, and a lot of it did, but the ending of the movie where it's like, okay, well, we finished one mission, on to the next one, and the question about whether or not there was anything they could use underneath the church, where Boyce slides straight to the guy's face.
And I was like, yeah, I figured the villagers were lying to us.
Yeah.
Like, that was what kept it grounded at the end for me.
I do want to say regarding that final battle, I really noticed it in this part, especially when Boyd was getting thrown around by Mr. Nazi Franz. And one thing I really enjoyed about the action in this movie is like hits and shots just felt like there was a lot of actual force behind them.
Yes.
And
I
Noah
would not be
specifically
surprised
mentioned
if
that,
Boyce
too.
had actually gotten injured while shooting that fight. It looked like he got hurt a lot.
Yeah,
I loved that so much.
Just like
every single hit in this movie, you watch these people smash their faces into bricks. I know that the CG can do great things, and you can CG out in like soft like mats and stuff.
Yeah.
But when Waffner threw him into the fence,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, ow! Because some of the other hits,
Ugh.
you know, like there were some really poorly pulled punches in this movie from Wyatt Russell.
Totally.
That man throws a bad fake punch,
He
but
does.
every single time Boyd got hit, the
It's
man.
Boyce. We have to stay
Boyce.
consistent.
Boyce, come on, guys.
Did I not say Boyce?
You said Boyd.
Oh, jeez, my bad. Every time that Boyce got hit, he fell like a sack of bricks.
Yeah. It looked
Yeah.
like it
Or
hurt.
like when Tibbet got shot and he just fell straight as a board down onto his face. I'm like, ow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Ow.
I think because most of the time with these, like, so audience, with these zombies, they kind of get super strength. And so the most common example of seeing super strength in movies is in like Marvel or DC films. And it always feels, compared to this, it feels really stunted in those movies, or not as real, or you can very much feel it as being fake.
Yeah.
But the way that they showed like these people's strength, and just like throwing people around. It was really, really well done.
Yeah.
Like props to whoever like coordinated the fights.
Yeah, especially when they do it on was his name Chase, the camera guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they do it to him and he like just like he's just like accidentally breaking his entire body.
Yeah.
And he's got like collarbones sticking out through his skin and he's just smacking his face into things. Like that felt like, you know, it was CG and it looked like it was CG, but like
You could still feel it.
they
you know?
played the scene so serious that you bought into it. And it felt really like, you know, like this is what would happen if a person was really just suddenly given that kind of superpower. They would just destroy themselves by accident even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also
Definitely.
very much enjoyed that. So, Nazi boy Franz, he injects himself with this Nazi medicine to make himself a Nazi superhero.
Yeah.
And
And he does like 3 syringes of it.
I think he does like
He
2 or
does.
3, yeah.
Yeah.
And he, like right before this, was shot in the face. So his face was like very kind of disfigured. And I liked that they kept that rather than being like, oh, like you heal now. The
Yeah,
same
it's
thing
like it
with
doesn't fix anything. He just ignores it.
Yeah, the same thing with the camera guy. Once he was injected with the stuff and woke up, he had been like shot in the chest twice. And so he's like kind of touching the holes. He's like, I don't even feel it. And so I don't know. I liked that they kind of kept
Yeah.
their injuries rather than pulling bullshit like, oh,
Yeah.
you heal.
Yeah. And the whole
Yeah.
scene
I
with
agree.
Chase
'Cause
is really clever exposition on how the stuff works. Because they could have had a scene where, like, you know, the evil doctor is explaining it all to Franz or
Wapner,
something.
You don't know what will happen. And then he says what will happen.
Yeah, there's none of that. We have a scene where it happens to Chase and he talks through everything that's happening to him, and we're shown most of it that way. Like that's really good. I love the way that this movie did its exposition.
Yes. I can agree with that. And I will touch on that when we go into the reviews, because there's some stuff about that in there.
Okay.
But yeah. So
All the Evil Lab stuff is really cool. I liked it a lot.
it is really cool.
It's
I
good
thought all
classic
those-
Evil Lab stuff. The spine head
Yeah.
lady was really good. Reminded me a lot of
Yeah.
Day of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun stuff in there without one of the things that always bugs me, because like Nazi zombie stuff, people have all their own ideas on how it's supposed to happen,
Right.
but so much of it ends up revolving around like actual magic making things happen, you know? Like Wolfenstein is based entirely around the occult and using that power to supercharge their technology, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Dead Snow is like a Draugr type of situation where their greed keeps them alive as zombies.
Uh-huh.
You
In
know, I think
JoJo's
there's
Bizarre Adventure, I don't even know how. I'm still a little bit confused as to how he kept himself alive, but that's JoJo.
it's
for
German
The
you.
power of
engineering.
German engineering.
it's the greatest in all the world.
They have the greatest technology on Earth.
Volkswagen. It'll keep you going. But yeah, no, like, the mysticism thing I did want to talk about briefly. It's one of those things where I think it's kind of a well-known, kind of taken for granted fact that that era of, you know, I guess I'll just say the Nazis. The Nazis were really interested in mysticism, and I find it really interesting the different ways that does make it into pop culture.
Right.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure being one example where they're trying to like figure out how these magic like ancient stone masks work. It's like they really thought to themselves, if we're meant to be like this and we're meant to rule the world, surely there's some otherworldly power that will get us there. I liked the in this movie how he said 1,000-year Reich needs 1,000-year soldiers.
That's a
I
cool
also love
line,
how
yeah.
selfish that thought is, because it's like, well, if we're gonna be around for 1,000 years, then these same poor men have to fight our war forever.
Oh yeah.
I just thought of that.
Government for you.
And I did, speaking of all of this like historical stuff and fun real world facts, let's talk about the fact that there are no the use of a specific symbol in this movie, which is it doesn't show up at all.
Yeah, they make it perfectly clear that these are Nazis, and there's not a single moment where you look at a Nazi and you don't think, hey, that's a Nazi. But they accomplish this all without any swastikas?
Yeah. And the reasoning for that... Sorry. The reasoning for that is because the swastika is heavily censored in Germany. So a lot of big-time World War II, like, fictional pieces, like Call of Duty is a great example, also censors the same thing. In the single-player campaign, they were able to use them because they could change it for the different regions they were releasing it to, but in the multiplayer online campaign for their World War II games, there are no swastikas for censorship reasons. And personally, though some people might argue censorship bad at all times, I like the inclusion of other symbols like the double lightning bolts and the Iron Cross because those are being really normalized in certain hate groups in America these days. And they're kind of trying to use those so that they are less recognizable to the general populace, but very recognizable to each other. Right. So when using those lesser used symbols in popular media when there are obviously Nazis, I think it'll help the average person be more aware of hate groups.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that there weren't swastikas.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until you pointed it out, and then thinking back on it, I was like, oh, yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah, I noticed the first time through when they did that weird close-up on Waffner's lighter, and it just had that really weird...
It's a rune, I think.
Yeah, that little Nordic rune.
Yeah. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, is that supposed to mean something? Is that supposed to mean something? And I'm like, that's not a swastika. I don't know what that is. So I looked it up. Couldn't find anything about it because I was just like, what is on the lighter in Overlord? Where are the swastikas in Overlord? And that's all I was like searching. So yeah, I'm sure it probably is a rune and means something, but I don't know what it means.
I thought it was an SS symbol.
Nope, not that either.
No, it's just a rune. Most modern neo-Nazi groups use an O, but so that was kind of what I was expecting to see more of. But yeah, that's just another rune in that same alphabet.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Fun facts of the day.
Another thing on the historical angle is I really like that zombies are such a common outcome in modern Nazi media.
I'm sorry, Nina just showed me what the rune means, and it literally just means faith in Nazism.
Nice.
It is an SS symbol. I'm not gonna like say it out loud or anything, but all I googled was Nazi runes.
Nice.
So yeah, when I think of SS symbols, I think of like literal two S's.
Yeah, the
double lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that case, yes, Emma, you were dead on right. It is just
nice.
I did it.
Nazi.
I was right about something. Audience, be proud of me.
Woo!
Tweet me saying how proud of me you are.
Applaud. Wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, just stand up and applaud right now.
We'll take a moment of silence. Okay, that was enough. Thank you.
I think it'll be really funny if you cut that moment out in post and it's just like a moment of silence. Okay, that's enough.
That's like what it was in real life. What are you talking about?
I didn't have time to applaud.
All right. Whoops. Sorry.
But yeah, like I think it's really interesting that that's such a pervasive idea, and a lot of that's just because of Call of Duty, of course. But like,
yeah,
if you read books about the soldiers in like World War I, World War II, there were always rumors of the German army having these like factories where they made bombs out of corpses and other kinds of like creepy stuff like that. And you look into it in real life, and yeah, they were doing an awful lot of pretty weird things, trying to accomplish a lot of pretty crazy stuff. They were trying to make a death ray at the time that they were finally stopped. at the end of the war. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was
They
a
were
ton
doing
of crazy
some
stuff
really
going
crazy
on.
stuff. You can do a lot of scientific stuff when you aren't taking ethics into account.
Yeah.
Which is why
This is true.
whenever a World War II enthusiast guy is like, well, they made a lot of scientific accomplishments, I'm like, shut up.
Like, yeah, through human rights
Because-
violations.
Yeah, they didn't have fucking morals.
Yeah, I'd be okay not having those scientific breakthroughs or having to wait longer
I
for
would
them.
too.
I would be
I would
completely okay
too.
with that.
I do want to ask on the topic of mysticism and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nina, did you look up anything about this? Because in the final battle, I think Nazi boy Franz has Boyce kind of up against a fence or something and is talking about like the tar and its properties, and that like the French soil only needed to be unlocked through like French blood and they were just too cowardly to do it. Like, do you know
There's a lot
like,
to that,
was-
certainly.
Yeah,
was
that's-
there anything like historically to that,
Yeah.
or like what was that about?
See, I was talking to Noah about that because it seems like it came so out of nowhere that it like has to have had some like specific example in history. But I honestly couldn't find anything specific about that.
Okay. Just the fact that it's tar feels so odd, like such a weird
It feels
choice.
Yeah.
really specific, right? There's a lot of articles about it, but they're all just referring in the vague like topic in general of like experimentation. I know that they didn't just pull one thing that is also noted is they didn't just pull from the Nazis. So the scene with the spine head.
Yeah.
In 1940, Soviet Russians apparently reanimated a dog's head. So that is the basis for that one
Oh,
specifically. I'm not sure
that's pretty weird.
about the tar specifically, though.
Okay then.
Yeah.
All right.
If someone out there knows, I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find it in my cursory dig.
That aspect of it and the lack of hard information that you get gives it a very like Lovecrafty Herbert West kind of feel to me. And that's probably only because, embarrassingly enough, I'm a fan of Lovecraft's work, and Herbert West happens to be my favorite of his stories.
Fair enough. No, I'm with you there. You're gonna see when we eventually do our Color Out of Space Annihilation double feature that I am planning, that I also have a lot of love in my heart for the ideas that Lovecraft used, but not so much for his actual execution of some of those ideas.
Yes. We will talk a lot about that then.
Yeah. But I feel that kind of like looming sense of the universe being kind of evil and you being able to unlock that through being terrible to other people.
Yeah. That's what he was trying to do, all right. Yeah, but so much of it that just like you kind of get the impression that the Nazis don't fully understand it either.
Oh, they definitely don't.
The doctor seems pretty open about that, but Franz, his name isn't actually Franz, but that is what they all call him. Franz definitely seems to think that he understands it because he's so, evil.
Crazy?
He's
yeah,
devoted.
he seems to be a pretty terrible person, and terrible people tend to think
he's
that they
delusional.
understand things better than they do.
Also, in fairness, he did not have a lot left going for him at that point. His face was peeled off.
He had very little to lose, I suppose.
Just more of his face.
And honestly, that's like the only healing action that the zombie stuff gives you in the entire movie. Like, there's a little bit of his face stitching back together, but it still remains
very
like,
gradually
blasted open.
I did notice that. You kind of see it just in the final couple of scenes with him. It's just that his face isn't as open as it was. I like that they made it that slow.
Yeah, it's not Wolverine or Deadpool. It's much slower.
Yeah. I also think it was very smart of them to feature the zombies themselves as little as they do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, going into the movie, I was expecting it to just be, just a typical zombie shoot 'em up kind of thing. But
Yeah.
the zombies are really very non-present for most of the movie, and that was such a good choice.
Yeah,
I fully agree.
the only ones you really get good glimpses of are the aunt, which is very quick, and I don't know if she's technically a zombie or what was going on with her.
It seems like she's kind of like halfway or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Kind of
And
like
then-
the dog skull in the woods.
Yeah. And then the one that chased Chloe, which that one was really freaky.
Good old
they
bone
did-
spike arm.
Yeah, they did really, really great with
Yeah.
that one. And then Nazi boy Franz.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a
And
few of
Ford,
them
I guess.
coming out of the cabinets when Franz opens them up at the end, but like we get a
Yeah.
very short look at them and then they get blown up. Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
they use the
It's
zombies
established
so
that there's like 20 of
sparingly.
them, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that they used sparingly was the Nazis,
That's a good point.
because
Oh,
what do you call when they're interrogating Waffner? He meant, or
That's
they're
his
like, yeah,
real
he
name,
says
right.
there's, yeah, Waffner. They're just like, all right, he says there's 40 people inside, and you know what? You don't feel like there's an unending number of people, because let's be real, all your guys are going to be on the front lines at the beach. You're going to spare maybe like just one, maybe two crews of people to monitor your radio tower. You don't need a lot of people there. You need them up front.
yeah. A radio
And-
jamming tower requires very little manning, even if you do have an evil lab under it.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. I doubt that there were only 40 people, but I think if you went through the movie, you're probably not going to count much more than 40.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Like
I like that.
the
a lot.
place
that
where
was
you
cool.
saw the most Nazis being killed was at the gates when they were like shooting them with the machine gun and sniper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they blew up the motorcycle. Which
Which is
even
some
then,
good old fashioned wholesome Nazi killing, Inglorious Bastard style, and I liked it a lot.
Oh,
yeah, that was really cool. It was a good scene. But even then, I think around 40 is maybe a good number for
How many
like
ended
how
up
many
killing?
people probably died there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's a good estimate. I think they were pretty clean on their numbers.
Yep.
Made me happy. So many, like, war games, especially, condition you to think that, the numbers are pretty endless, because, like, it's like, oh, here you are at this middle of nowhere place, but because it's a video game, you just have to fight limitless enemies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then movies tend to feel like that too, just because
Who's keeping count?
Who keeps count of people?
Yeah.
But like with this, it was one of those things where he said 40 people, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try and pay attention this time around, see how many people are there. And as it turns out, 40 actually felt pretty reasonably accurate to it. I didn't feel like I was
once
being
they're-
drowned under the weight of endless, nameless Nazis.
Yeah, once they're actually inside and walking around in the place, they only ever run into like one or two at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Which,
not
like,
like around
of
every
course.
corner. They've got some space in between them.
Mm-hmm.
As makes sense.
Right.
All right, do you guys want to hear the reviews?
Oh yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so I went on IMDb. So these are mostly normal people and their opinions.
Got it.
There were, from my general little pass through, 4 major criticisms of this movie, and I have a rebuttal to each of them. I'd also like to hear your opinions.
Okay, I was about to say we are roasting these people, right? Because
Absolutely.
all right.
Common criticism 1 of 4. It's not fun enough.
What?
I don't know what they came in expecting.
Okay,
if this
so
wasn't fun enough.
I encountered this problem when I first watched Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. I think people expect when they hear zombies in a situation, they think it's going to be a lot more comedy. It's going to be a lot less serious tone, especially with the most famous Nazi zombie horror movie being Dead Snow, which is a comedy. It's like, oh, hee hoo, blowing up zombies. It's fun. and it's like really schlocky. This movie is not that.
And it's
I
far
think people-
scarier than Shaun of the Dead as well.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
true.
So that's my take, is that people went into this with expectations that didn't match what the movie actually wanted to be, and they refused to accept the movie as it was. But that's my
pretty
personal.
much. It's just wrong expectations and an inability to adjust to what they're actually seeing.
Yeah. Second common criticism, and this is my favorite one and the one I had the most notes for. It's not historically accurate.
Of
And-
course it's fucking
No, no, no,
not.
no, no.
Well, you got them there.
you have to listen to which part they're complaining about.
Oh,
I'll
no.
give you a guess.
Is it the zombies?
Is it the people are stupid and they don't realize that Normandy is in France and not Norway? Oh.
It's that there are black people.
What?
They're mad because there's a mixed squadron in this movie, and that the main sergeant at the beginning of the movie is a black man.
Yeah.
You kidding me?
Wow.
No.
Technically, yeah. Historically inaccurate.
Yeah,
But
probably
also,
wasn't
I think we can
happening
agree.
much, but also, like, come on now.
No, it actually 100% wasn't because there's fun stories about
Oh, not at
stuff
all.
like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like,
But
But come on.
now hear me out, y'all. Hear me out. If you're gonna add zombies to the story, maybe we can all agree that this is just a historically inaccurate film and we can have fun with it.
and we can have representation of, the kind of people who the Nazis hated. And like, personally,
Well, and also freaking, like, the whatever his name is, I don't know who the actor is. The guy who plays Boyce is a real good actor. He portrays the
He
character
is.
so well
And-
throughout. How
and,
can
like,
you have a
that-
complaint about that?
that's a lot of people who had this complaint also said that they didn't like his acting. I will add, it seems to me like maybe they're just racist. I don't want to, like, obviously I don't think they're ever going to hear this, but I'm already going to outright insult them when I get to the end of these criticisms. But
Yeah,
in
if you
this
leave reviews on
particular-
IMDb, fuck you.
but one thing that, like, I want to say is that if you replaced, these characters are just well written characters. There's no emphasis drawn to the fact that they are black. The only thing
Yeah.
that I can think of is with Boyce, his grandmother was Haitian and moved to Louisiana, which makes more sense for a black character than a white character,
Yes.
just historically. So him being black makes sense with that. But if he were a white character, nothing would have changed, and I don't see why it's an issue that he's black, and I don't see why these people are complaining about that at all.
Yeah.
Now, to give you a little more insight into the kind of person leaving these comments, another comment was, "Wow, every German in this movie is unequivocally evil and needs to be shot on sight."
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's
I'm
almost
not
like
hearing
this
a
is
problem.
this is a they're like, "Oh, it's such a black and white view of what happened." I'm like, this movie is set in France. There are no German civilians in this movie.
Yeah, it's just soldiers, and that's the way.
'Cause that's where the
World
war
War II
ended.
Be.
That's where the war ended. Of course it's set in France, and of course the only Germans that are there are Nazis. This is not, like, it's not that deep, fam.
Well, and also, like, regardless of whether you think it's a fair portrayal or not, if you're going out of your way to defend Nazis, then I have a problem with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, come on now.
I'll allow
Yeah.
you to make that argument if you're actively having like some random American commando team in Munich. And it's like, well, as it turns out, maybe there's a couple of nice German families in Munich that aren't Nazis.
Sure.
Then you can be like, wow, I
If-
can't believe that they made all of the Germans Nazis because there were definitely
Yeah.
good people in these cities. But this is not in Germany. The only Germans here are occupying forces.
And
And they're all Nazis.
exactly.
Because they're part of the Nazi military.
I want to
Yeah,
say,
that is that.
if anyone listening wants a nuanced take of German civilians in Nazi Germany, watch Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Or watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
No.
German engineer.
Our technology is
When you said JoJo, I was like, oh my god, Nina. And then you said Rabbit, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Is
Jojo
Rabbit good?
Rabbit.
I never saw it.
It's very
really
good.
good.
It is really
Nice.
good. And hilariously enough, the kind of person making these comments on Overlord, I also think would hate Jojo Rabbit, despite the fact that it does everything they're criticizing here.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. That was criticism number 2.
Stupid.
Criticism number 3 is that there is no emotional core and they couldn't get attached to any of the characters. I
the
don't see
hell?
that either.
What movie were they
I-
watching?
Yeah,
What?
I don't understand that comment
What?
either.
I felt like
I
it
was
gave
very
us
attached
just
to-
enough time to get attached to every character right before they died.
Like,
Exactly.
especially like, what's his name? Renson? Sergeant Renson?
Dawson.
No, I'm talking about
The sergeant.
Oh, the
I'm
sergeant.
talking about the sergeant, Sergeant Renson.
Oh, I didn't know that was his name.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I was really sad when he died, but I didn't remember his name.
Yeah, I wrote his name down because I couldn't just keep saying Black Sergeant in my notes.
Right, of course.
And I
True.
finally found his name, and I'm like, there it is. So I
I
went
don't think
through
his name
and
is
fixed it.
ever actually said in the narrative. I think he's just
I
the sergeant.
honestly. am
No,
not
it
sure
is
if it is.
because Ford mentions his name. He's
Oh, okay.
tracks.
Ford and Boyce. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, I felt like a lot of the characters that died in the beginning, we got enough character development on that plane that
Yeah.
almost any of them could have been our main crew along with Boyd.
Well, I mean, shoot,
Boyce.
the
Yeah.
first guy that dies when all those bullets come flying up through the floor of the plane and that one guy gets shot. And
Yeah,
the medic
well, he had a
dude
name.
immediately jumps up and goes to try and help him, and everyone else is like holding him back so he doesn't get shot as well. That scene was freaking heartbreaking, and we
It
had only
was.
seen any of these guys for like 2 minutes at the time. What in the world?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
The guy
this
that
movie
hopped up into
wastes
the aisle and then
absolutely
got
no
gunned.
time hurting you.
It
Yeah.
doesn't.
The guy that hopped into the aisle and got gunned down by the anti-air immediately when he was just trying to say, Sergeant, people got shot. Firstly, yeah, Sergeant knew. Secondly,
Well,
wow, it was like all the deaths in this movie were so incredibly sudden, and
yeah.
I
Yeah.
loved that.
It was
Yeah, and
heartbreaking.
Dawson
You
is
did,
the best
like-
example of that.
Mm-hmm. Because, you expect to have some random deaths in a war movie, right?
Sure, but like
And you
him,
expect to
he's
have
in the
some
middle of
random
a
deaths in a
sentence.
horror
You're in the
movie.
midst of getting attached to him, and then suddenly
Honestly,
he's just gone.
I think more than half of our named character deaths, they were in the middle of saying something.
Yeah.
Because Chase got jumped when he was calling for some help. He didn't die immediately then, obviously, but
Right.
he got jumped then. Dawson blew up in the middle of a sentence. The guy who got shot in the plane, a couple of the guys who got shot in the plane, a lot
Right.
of people were mid-sentence and done.
very
And everyone
very,
fell like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
very sad. Which
Very,
makes
very
you
sad.
despite making you hesitant to get attached to any of the other characters, I still got so attached to
You
Tibbet.
still can't
I
help it. Yeah.
I expected Tibbet to die, but when he didn't, I was
I was so happy he survived that.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Um,
good.
but yeah, that I hugely disagree. I guess that's very subjective whether or not you can get attached to these characters.
I don't think it's that subjective, though.
I mean,
I don't think so.
I'll
I think if
accept
you don't get
certain levels
attached to
of
these
it.
guys, you're trying.
some people can get attached to the characters on Community, and I really can't. So I think that there is a certain subjectivity to being able to get yourself attached to any character, no matter how well written. There are books that I know people love and love the main characters that I get into it, and I'm like, I can't stand this guy. I don't know what people are talking about. So I'm willing to give a little more grace on this particular criticism than maybe anything else, because even given all of that, I think you should still be able to enjoy this movie for what it is, even if you don't get attached to the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do
I-
definitely think that's a stupid criticism still, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
no.
I agree. I think a number of this person's criticisms are stupid and kind of without base.
This is different people.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was
Yeah,
about to
these-
say
these
this
are-
is
A
all
number of
coming
these
from the same
people-
No,
person. 'cause-
they
opinions.
a couple of these overlapped. A lot of the "it's not fun enough" and "no emotional core" overlapped. The historically inaccurate and no emotional core overlapped. Like, and this last one also overlapped with different people had a couple of these criticisms. Not one person had like all four at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. Looking over at the old discussion thread on Reddit,
Oh no.
I saw
Oh,
a few
no.
things. Largely, people enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
They really liked it. One thing they consistently praise is the sound design,
Oh yes.
which
Oh, yes.
was incredible.
The sound design is
Um,
good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The soundtrack
but-
of this movie is really well done. I only ever was aware of it when there wasn't any.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
true.
The scene in the lab had a very like it was just like some swooshes like
Yeah, that
fading in
weird
and out.
reversed sounds.
And
Yeah, that was nice.
that was
Just
so
spooky
cool.
stuff.
And the fact that it stayed like weird reverse sounds even as it was getting more intense. It stayed the same very uncomfortable music.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The whole movie had a tone and it stuck with that tone.
Real
Yeah.
solidly,
Yeah. For sure.
But Emma, please continue.
Fun fact that I didn't realize, I knew I recognized Nazi boy Franz from somewhere.
Oh, what was he in?
He was in Game of Thrones. He played Euron Greyjoy.
Right.
Oh.
I
never
remember-
watched Game of Thrones.
I remember the other podcast. Shout out to the Dead Meat podcast. I remember when they reviewed this movie. They exclusively called him Euron Greyjoy throughout the entire podcast.
I prefer Nazi boy Franz.
I do as well.
And somebody else, I just really liked this comment, so I'm gonna highlight it. That Mexican guy 13 said, "Please don't tell me I was the only one that laughed when the German guy used the kid as a human shield and did that evil chuckle as he escaped."
He does do
Okay,
that.
no, that was actually. See, if that comment had stopped with "as a human shield," I'd be like, no, yeah, you were the only one. But when he like just looks for dead in the eye and goes, ha, ha, and twirls his
It's like
proverbial
a
mustache,
Wario
no, that was
laugh.
honestly with how beat up he was, he looked a little like Wario too.
Oh, it was good. Okay, can I give the fourth criticism that
Oh,
I
yeah.
noticed?
Oh, right. There's another.
100%.
It's the last one.
So many.
Vague plot. Which my only rebuttal to that is, how many horror movies have you watched recently that had a really well explained plot?
Well, how many war movies either?
Yeah, that too.
War
think what
movies
frus-
have, I mentioned it already earlier, war movies do not have a plot. It's a bunch of guys set to go do a task, and then the rest of the movie is just finding out who dies while they're doing the task. That is it.
Well, yeah, and even if like if you're talking about like the science of it, like what are you looking for? The Captain America Winter Soldier explanation, which is also not much more well explained. It's nothing,
yeah, it's just,
man.
we've got this stuff and we inject them and then the stuff happens, you know?
Exactly.
Like, what do you want, a recipe?
Exactly. So, yeah, that was the last one. All of this to say, I've built a profile of the kind of person who left these comments. And the profile is that guy who really likes World War II for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I hate that kind of guy.
He's probably
One
the
of-
same guy that says things like, well, you know, Hitler had a lot of good ideas. He did a lot of good stuff for the road system in Germany.
I've been
Like,
around
yeah,
that
he
person
did that
before.
so he could send tanks and motorcycles to Poland faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Well, you know, he was in favor of animal rights. Shut up. Nobody cares. Other better people have been into animal rights.
You know,
I
he
do
actually
wanna
was a kind of
add-
a good artist.
Emma's trying to say something.
Sorry.
I do want to add a number 5 based on the Reddit.
All right, go.
One common, I don't know that I would say complaint, but something that people were like, I would have liked to see this more, was more like Nazi horror torture stuff. Because you see the woman who was basically beheaded and was just on a spinal column, and that was really freaky. But they were like, it would have been cool to get like a few more things But yeah, which I mean, I guess I get, but
I
at
mean,
the same time,
Yeah, I'm a
like,
sucker for a
I'm
good evil
fine.
lab scene, but I feel like the fact that we got so little of it is what makes it so effective, right?
Yeah, like there probably was more stuff in there.
Oh
We just
yeah.
was freaked out and didn't want to like hunt down every little thing.
We did get to see more experiments later on, but they were much more monsters to be fought with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I can like agree that when I first watched it, I felt that way, but in appreciating what the movie does as a whole and all of the pacing that it had, I don't think they could have added anything that would have made the movie a more enjoyable experience
Yeah.
to me.
I think it's
Yeah.
it's just like the explanation of how the tar thing works in the first place. It's better if we get less.
Yeah, for sure.
But I can see that. I can totally see that criticism.
And especially
You
when it
come
comes to like the spine head, like that
Mhm.
looks so good because we saw it so briefly. If we
Yeah.
would
Oh,
have had
yeah.
a 3-minute scene where that thing was in the shot the whole time, it wouldn't have looked as good. We wouldn't have been happy
No.
with it. The fact that
No.
it's so
Mhm.
brief makes it good.
I think
This is true.
you come into a horror movie wanting certain things, but personally, I can't think of like I think a movie that I have a similar complaint to that these people have with Overlord is Event Horizon. I expected way more like disturbing stuff out of that movie than I got. And I know that it had been cut down, but I hear people tell me all the time that that's one of the most disturbing horror movies they've ever watched, and I don't see it. So, like, I get that complaint. You go into a horror movie wanting horror, and body horror, especially in this case, but I honestly can't think of a gory torture movie that does it better than this one, because Saw does a lot of torture stuff, but honestly it's so ineffective because we see so much, like Jeff was saying. That's how I feel about Saw anyway, is I feel like at some point
Saw has other problems also, but yeah.
well, because they don't spend any time on like the emotional core of it is another big problem. Like it's all
Has
just so
none.
goofy. It has none. So it's like the reason that things are scary in Overlord is because like we're attached to certain things.
Yeah.
And it's also set in a very real situation. That's how I feel anyway.
Yeah, and
Makes sense.
I'm gonna say it again. I think a big part of the benefit is just that they decided to feature the zombies so little. They didn't make them the focal point.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot because zombie movies are stale. No one wants zombie movies.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a huge thing. People are always talking about how done with zombie movies they are, but this was fun. This was different.
Yeah,
this was
they
a
did
zombie
something
movie
else
with
it.
one zombie in it. Keeping zombie hordes down for me is very important for my enjoyment of a zombie movie because zombie
Yeah.
hordes are just boring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
we're
horde is
looking at
not
you.
fun to watch. It's not an interesting villain.
Looking at you, World War Z.
Oh my gosh.
Exception, I
Yeah.
think, being Train to Busan does it really well.
I
Yeah.
love that movie, and I
But
can't wait to
also
talk
for
about it one
most
day.
of Train to Busan, you're dealing with a set of individuals and not just an innumerable horde. So it is a different situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the best horror movies, personally, that I like are ones where it is about individuals in a horrific situation rather than, oh, horrific situation, aren't zombies scary? Let's show you as many zombies as possible. It's like you need a good perspective character, or I need a good perspective character
Yeah.
to get into things. Yeah.
And that's a big thing that
That's-
you see just depending on where the movie is coming from, actually. Because lots of times American zombie movies are just an excuse to show off a bunch of guns, largely.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that movies like Shaun of the Dead or like Train to Busan turn out so good is because they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about
Yes.
making an effective narrative and also potentially comedy. And the guns are almost entirely non-present.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely
So that's
agree.
yeah, that's a big thing.
That's all the notes that I have. Personally, other than just, the typical stuff. Obviously we have our badass female lady character. obviously she's
Loved
female
her.
and a lady, Chloe, who is ready to throw hands from the moment she steps onto the scene until the moment. I liked that in the conclusion, even though we don't get any words from her, we do see that she's a nurse now within the American troops, and she's getting to do what she's good at and be helpful. She does. I will say this is maybe one of my criticisms in the movie is there's at least three explicit scenes where she is having issues and Boyce saves her, like in a really funny way. There's the first time that Waffner is harassing her and Boyce points the gun at her. That's one. Two, she's getting harassed again and Boyce just comes and knocks the guy out. Three, the same thing again. A guy is pointing a gun at her and Boyce just comes out of nowhere and knocks the guy out. And it's just like, wow, this is the only way we know how to resolve this, huh?
She does deal with that one zombie by herself, though.
She
Nobody
does,
helps
she
her with
kicks
that.
ass.
She just figures it out.
I wish
Also,
she could figure it out with
after-
human enemies.
Well, after Tibbet dies, when
He doesn't
or
die.
not dies,
Tibbet doesn't
was
die.
shot.
Hold on.
Yeah, when he was shot while they were fighting with those Germans, she just comes around a corner and like guns them all fucking down like in
Hell
2
yeah.
seconds.
Well, and as soon as once Waffner drives off with her brother, the moment that they are out of sight, she doesn't waste any time. She just starts picking up guns and grenades off of the bodies. Like,
Yeah.
she
She's like,
is
"Time to
ready to
go."
go destroy things.
And I love that it's not at the like sacrifice of any of her like emotional core. Like she's still like a very Katniss Everdeen situation where she's been left alone by her parents to care for her brother, and she's very stressed about it. It's obvious that she's stressed about it. She's doing what she has to do to survive, and she is good at it, and I like her a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her relationship with Boyce after they rescue Peter, she's like, okay, Boyce, come on, we're going now. And he's like, I have to stay. And you can see that she's visibly very upset about that. And I appreciate like that specifically. She's not just like, okay, it's time to go. I'm going to leave this random dude behind. You can see that she herself has gotten very attached to him. And she's like really sad that she has to leave with her brother.
Despite that, I mean, like, despite the fact that Boyce saves her so many times over the course of the movie, she's never shown as being helpless. Mm-hmm. She is shown as being a pretty strong character and a person of action. Like, she's never at a loss for what to do. She doesn't waste any time. She just goes and does the thing that has to happen.
Exactly. And I think it's also in the one scene where they knock the guy out who later becomes motorcycle grenade guy. I think she was bait. Like, I think that was a setup. I don't remember for sure.
That was 100%.
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah. That's what the plan was.
Right. Totally forgot. See, I pay attention most of the time, but some things do fly
You've seen
over
this
my
movie
head.
twice.
I have seen this movie twice. Yeah, no, I love this movie a lot. I again, for what it is, I think it does everything almost perfectly.
It does a lot of things right, for sure. I do have a couple of very, very nitpicky complaints. There's a
Complain
scene
away.
where Boyce is getting chased by a dog and he outruns the dog. You can't do
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
He did do that, though.
You
German
can't
Shepherd.
do that. I've run from many a dog in my days, and I have lost every time. I don't know that a person can really do that. Also, just after Waffner gets half of his face blown off, he shouldn't be able to talk as clearly as he does.
Yeah, I did write that down.
Which,
Yeah.
Again, nitpicky. It doesn't really affect the flow of the movie. He wouldn't be nearly as scary if he couldn't talk. I get it. But
Can you imagine the whole climax if he were just like...
He had like part of his mouth blown off, yes. But he still had his teeth, and considering he couldn't feel pain, I feel like he could still talk pretty normally.
Oh yeah, but like if I hold my mouth open like this, so that it like not even remotely as much as he had to deal with, I can't talk normal at all. You can't make L noises. I can make N noises, but not L noises, because you don't have a half of your face. I feel really stupid. And I can't even say how stupid I feel, because I can't make that noise.
Are you just holding your cheek?
Can you
Yeah, no,
please
I-
try to say a couple of his lines from later in the movie?
I don't remember anything that he said other than, driving engineering is the greatest song in the world.
No more
no.
JoJo references.
Yeah, I'm just hooking my finger into my mouth and holding my cheek to the side. But that's just like a little complaint that I have with every face damage thing. Like the Dark Knight,
Two-Face
I had
in
massive
Batman has the
issues.
same problem. Yeah.
Mhm. Especially because like specifically in Batman, he was like, so I'm gonna make like a lot of sucking noises to try and keep spit in my face because it's half blown off. And Christopher Nolan was like, no, you wouldn't do that. And he's like, are you sure? You can see all my teeth. And he's like, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie kind of tries to distract you from it by never showing that side of Waffner's face while he's talking, which is
No, yes, it does.
Does it?
Yeah.
I was watching for
He
it, and I
delivers a
didn't see
line
it.
dead forward to the camera where they lifted the shot for the poster, and he's just like talking right at him, and he's like, "I'm the greatest Nazi that ever Nazi'd."
He does say
Tremble in
that.
fear.
That is exactly what he says. Shoot, how did I miss that? I was looking for that even. There were a lot of scenes where he talks and it doesn't show his face. And I thought they
Yeah,
were
when he and Ford
specifically
are
trying to
fighting.
distract from the fact that he shouldn't be able to talk so clearly.
No, yeah, when
I don't
he
know.
had
I got
even less face,
glass
he
in
delivered
my
a
eyes
whole
at
line.
work yesterday, and that was like right before I watched this movie,
God.
so that might have been the reason I missed it.
Are you all right?
Yeah, can you see?
Oh yeah, it wasn't like crushed glass, it was glass bead, which is by far the most preferable kind of glass to get in your eyes. So
Good.
I would prefer no glass in my eye, but
well,
I'm
yeah,
just
but if you had to
different that way.
choose, if you had to get any, this stuff's real soft. It's
I would simply choose none.
well, yeah. There's something wrong with my helmet though, so
Ouch. But anyway.
Enough about sandblasting.
So I have one thing that I need to bring up here. The zombie that went after Chloe with only one arm and tried to stab her with his like tibia
His
and fibia.
bones. Yeah.
radius and ulna when it's in the arm, actually.
Oh, whatever. I couldn't care less. The radius and ulna. He looked like Daniel Craig.
Did he?
I disagree.
I think he looked a little like Daniel Craig.
Is it kind of like
Don't-
how in Star Wars Episode 7, Daniel Craig was the stormtrooper but went uncredited? He was actually the zombie in this but went uncredited just because.
That would make me very happy. Unfortunately, I cannot find... Oh, here he is.
I don't know about that.
I don't.
Okay, he doesn't look jack like him anymore now that I can see like a
I
close-up
don't see it.
view of his face that's
He
not
looks
moving.
a little
Dude, what are you
baby.
talking about?
What are you-
No, when he was moving and his didn't stand still at any point, there's some angles that he looks... I didn't say that I thought it was him. I said it looked a little like him.
You know what he does look like is he looks like Maynard James Keenan from Tool.
Actually, he really does.
I don't know what he looks like, Noah. Can you
He
bring
looks like
up a
that.
photo of- Can you bring up a photo of Tool? He does look like Tool.
Yeah, doesn't he?
Yeah, Mr. Tool.
Mr. Tool himself.
Mr. Tool. That's
Tim
him.
the Tool Man
The Tool.
Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know. That particular zombie
does
looks
look like
reminded me a lot of the one first zombie from Return of the Living Dead. Have any of you guys watched that one?
No.
No.
No, okay.
I think we've already discussed what zombie movies I have and haven't seen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the first zombie that appears in Return of the Living Dead reminded me, this zombie reminded me a lot of that one, because he's just constantly sprinting and screaming, and doesn't really seem like he knows what he's doing, but he wants to hurt something,
Me too,
Like,
man.
it's a similar enough look and a similar vibe to me. Also, there's a zombie that gets covered in tar and then climbs out of the tar pit, and that also reminded me of Return of the Living Dead, because they also have a tar zombie in that one.
Tar zombie. Disgusting.
Interesting.
Disgusting.
Yeah. One other minor beef with movies in general.
Yeah.
Wow, we're getting broad here.
We're just
It's
talking
a
about
big
all
broad
movies
statement,
now.
All right. Now, hear me out here. Brass knuckles, like Ford has on his trench knife, right?
Yeah.
They do a lot more damage to skin than any movie ever shows.
Yeah, Waffner's
fact
face would have
that-
been blown half off before he ever got shot.
Because I don't want to see that necessarily, but also if you're going to be using brass knuckles, especially edged brass knuckles, like that aren't as rounded,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those stupid, like objectively stupid things that gets to me a little bit.
See, actually, my bigger problem with that scene was just that he was only punching him in the face. Number one, you don't want to punch a man in the face with your bare hand because
Yeah,
you're
you'll
just
break
going to
your hand.
mess your hand up. Number two, if you're interrogating somebody, you don't go exclusively for the face. That's stupid. You've got his hands tied up above his head. You punch him in the stomach. You hurt his ribs. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nah.
But
I don't know anything about that, so I can't complain about that.
Another thing though, which just talking about Ford in general reminded me, on an acting front, I really loved how Ford felt 100% different from all the guys that were like very clearly fresh out of boot, because that's all that they talked about.
The
was
movie
how they
did
were
a
fresh
really
out of
good
boot.
job of showing us who was experienced and who was not.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Tibbet really shines, like, bright and proud, because he was so busy acting like he wasn't inexperienced that he was inexperienced looking in a totally different way, and it worked really well.
Yeah. No, I think that I think that was a really good thing, and I also enjoyed in the scene where they're talking to Chloe for the first time, and Boyce is speaking French. He's like got a beautiful like Louisiana accent and all that, and then Ford is just like Ciel Blanc, the town Ciel Blanc. It's like, Ford, can you please just try even a little? He doesn't have time for it. But I did love the contrast, the obvious contrast. Like it's an easy dynamic to write. Someone who's cynical versus someone who's a sweet, soft child.
It's harder to pull it off in a not annoying way.
It's hard to pull it off in a not annoying way. I did see a lot of people complaining about they found Boyce's good nature annoying.
The man was 3 months ago. He was a civilian.
Yeah, I think obviously again, these are guys who think that if they got drafted, they would be ready to shoot someone immediately.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they probably would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I've known too many guys like that to disagree. Anywho,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and,
I think it was pulled off well for being a pretty absurdly conceptual like Nazi zombie movie, to be able to pull off that dynamic as well as they did.
Yeah. I like that they had a lot of little touches pointing to Boyce's inexperience as well. There's in the final scene, the commanding officer guy says that he's going to put them into Charlie Company, and then when Boyce goes back to the other guys, he refers to it as C Company because he's still not used to using the phonetic alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a neat touch. I like that.
Yep.
And that was actually kicked off my favorite line of the entire movie, with Tibbet just being like, wow, they're really putting us back out there? You kind of think they would have sent us home.
They've worked for one day.
It was a hell of a day, Jeff.
Actually, it wasn't
That's
even a
another
day.
thing.
It was a night. It was a
The time
single
passed
night.
very nicely in this movie.
Yeah.
I was shocked when it was daytime, and I'm like, oh yeah, time passed.
Like,
Okay.
it feels very well paced in that way too.
Yeah.
It's not like to harken back to Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which I mentioned before, because I really enjoy that movie.
It's a very good movie.
In Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, a fight starts at what is chronologically you assume would be either it's twilight, I think, and then the fight is still going on at dawn, and it's just two dudes fighting. It's between Darcy and Wickham, and and they started fighting chronologically in the story at twilight, and they're still fighting at dawn, and that has always bugged me watching that movie. That nothing like that happens in this one.
Sometimes it be like that though.
I don't think it do, though, Jeff.
But sometimes.
Anyway, I love Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and there was a lot of similar criticisms towards that movie as there are to this one.
I think that one takes itself a bit less seriously, though.
Oh yeah, just
easily. A little bit.
But still more seriously than Dead Snow, which is kind of feels like a gosh. You know those comedies that like to describe themselves as being raunchy and outrageous, and you're like, I'm not watching that. I have no desire to see something raunchy or outrageous. I feel like
we're all familiar with Seth Rogen.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's kind of when people are like, oh, a lighthearted zombie movie, they're thinking a Seth Rogen movie, a Will Ferrell movie, but horror. But yeah, I think really we've pretty much exhausted everything there is to talk about this movie. It's a good fun movie. Mm-hmm. If you have thought anything about this sounds interesting, and you just want to see the visuals that we're describing, I think it's worth a watch.
I think it's very worth a watch.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure.
It's on Hulu, so go watch it.
Unless you're a World War II guy, in which case I'm just going to warn you ahead of time, you're not going to like this movie.
It's not historically accurate.
There are people of color and women fighting, and they win.
That's not historically accurate.
Well, but on the other hand, the white Brooklyn boy also wins, so
he does win, and he
they never say that he's from Brooklyn, but that's what I assumed, right?
I know he's from New York, but
he's got to be from New York.
Yeah.
That's all I'm sure of.
Are you required to have a New York guy in every movie about World War II? Because it seems like there is always one.
Yeah, because there was one in Inglourious Bastards, right?
I'm surprised there wasn't like a Tex, you know? There's always
Yeah.
I guess Boyce was our Tex
I'm gonna say
stand-in.
Boyce is Louisianan, which is very as like, you know, Emma and I both lived in Texas for a while. I don't think I'm Emma. You correct me if I'm wrong, but Louisianans are close enough.
It's very different.
That's
I
what I
like
would
that.
expect.
Emma 100% did not agree.
I would never have expected a Texan and a Louisianian to be similar at all.
Yeah,
no, I'm 100% joking.
Oh, okay.
I know most Louisianans I know would hate the comparison as well.
They are right to hate that comparison.
They are, because it's a completely different flavor of Southern America. But yeah, I did like that backstory element to Boyce, where he like why he spoke French made perfect sense, and why his French sounded different to Chloe, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I really wish that there would have been a moment that he said something in French to her and she was just like, what in the world are you talking about? Because, I don't know, I used to work with a couple of Puerto Ricans and one Mexican, and when they would speak Spanish to each other, there were frequently times that they would just look at each other like, what are you even saying?
Yeah, no, that's
so if
that's
the differences
very common.
between Haitian French and French are as big as the differences between
and they are
Puerto Rican and Mexican Spanish, which I should assume that the differences are pretty large.
Haitian French, Caribbean French in general is more of a Creole, which means it's kind of got a lot of different elements from different languages kind of pulled into it.
Right.
But, you know...
kind of like the way that English is, just off of a French base instead.
Similar. Yeah. Caribbean Creole is the most, like, the one that you hear about the most. But there are other Creoles, like Jamaican Creole, which have different different like additives to them that make it completely different from Cajun Creole. So you know, it's just it's more of a dialect than a specific language, but it's such a specific dialect that it does have its own name.
Cool.
But yeah, Puerto Ricans and Mexicans, man, like every different Hispanic country has their own quirks, and some of it can be completely incomprehensible. One of my favorite examples is I was in a Spanish class. My teacher was Colombian. Colombia and Puerto Rico have a lot of overlaps in food. One specific overlap is these little beans that are called gandules in Puerto Rico.
Ooh.
But in Colombia, they're pronounced guandules. And my
Guandules?
Ain't that the things that they ride up and down the canals in Venice?
That's very good. But no, he got really mad at me. He corrected me like 5 times. But yeah, no. Spanish dialects are. My grandfather complains about it literally every time I like get him alone. It's just so that I can ask him about Barcelonans and he can crap on their lisp for a little while.
What?
Yeah, you could get any. I don't want to say any because I've been yelled at before for saying any, but there's a good chance if you're talking to someone who is bilingual and from a like South American country and you ask them about the differences between different Spanishes in different areas, they'll have a lot to say.
Nice.
Yeah, that checks out as a white person who has taken a Spanish class.
If you just have Spanish teachers from different areas, which I did, they'll tell you to pronounce things differently if they're from different places.
Yeah.
So. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
weird
like
note to end on.
They'll try and tell you that it's caramel and not caramel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it's stuff like
Weirdos.
specific letters, like the double L. Some areas want you to say "j" instead of "y." So
Oh yeah, that's
they'll
like a
hammer that into you.
Portuguese thing, right?
It's so
'Cause I know
more
in
South
Portuguese
American.
they also pronounce J's like as a hard J and not as a h. Like they'll say Jose,
I
not
would
Jose.
not know. Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
know
thanks
that.
everybody. As always, we're Casual Obsession, a language learning podcast.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm Nina. You can find me on Twitter as Nina Wolverina or as House Usher Rises, where I retweet different horror artists, and sometimes I also draw creepy stuff, but that's few and far between, to be honest. Yeah.
But you're not going to be drawing
I'm-
anything real soon.
No, because
No.
I busted my shoulder, but that's
Yeah.
fine.
I'm Emma. You can find me on Twitter at MJ2017 or on Twitch at Emma Panada. I also run the podcast Twitter, and you can find that at Casual Horror Pod.
I'm Noah. You can find me as Bubba the Bad, BUBBADABAD, Twitch, Twitter, and Insta. That's about all I've got on that front.
And I'm Jeff. You can find me on Twitter to hear about sandblasting and my spicy political takes at Bubba Wubba Dab, BUBBAWUBBADABADABAD. And you can follow my eternal quest to get more jacked on Instagram at The Hammer of Jeff.
Yay.
Heck yeah.
Our next episode will be coming out December 26th, I believe. So it is going to be a Christmas-themed movie that I will be hosting. We will be watching Krampus.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
The Cramp Man. It is actually
The
tonight.
Cramp
Is
Man.
The
fun fact as we're
Crampster.
recording it. As we're recording tonight,
It's
it is
Krampusnacht.
Krampusnacht
It is
tonight,
Krampusnacht. And it's Gritmas.
and it's Christmas, which is why we have
People
to
don't
go.
know what
So that
Christmas
doesn't mean
is.
anything to anybody.
That means
but
nothing to
Krampusnacht
anybody,
is
but it
real.
is happening. Just like the
Yeah.
Crampster.
Well, again, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you next time. Stay not a Nazi.
Yeah.